Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our spring retreat. We hope you've had a wonderful day. It's been absolutely beautiful weather here in Madison. I've heard from some people who were on the walk this morning and said it was spectacular, and I wasn't able to be there, but I had a couple videos sent to me, and it looked absolutely gorgeous. So thank you for all who went on the walk this morning at Mickey Joe's, and for all of you who walked on your own today. So that will be our welcome for this evening, and I'll turn it over to Flint. So glad to have you had all floated back in here with us, and for you to float from Hawaii to us, Flint. Thank you so much.
Of course, it's good to be back. We had a lovely day here. If you like spring rain, but one of the things that you might know about spring rain in Hawaii means we had rainbows. So it was uh, it was a lovely morning as I prepared. In fact, I um, I stepped away from my study and notes this morning to take a picture of my partner Erin standing on our front porch. And so it was a nice way to begin the morning. And maybe a beautiful image to invite us for just a few minutes of sitting and settling um, as we begin our time together. So if you'd allow yourself just a few moments of zazen, I'll invite the bell for you. As we sit together these few moments, so brief, really, I would like to drop into that space. The hymn to Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom. Homage to the perfection of wisdom, the lovely, the holy. The perfection of wisdom gives light. Unstained, the entire world cannot stain her. She is a source of light, and from everyone in the triple world she removes darkness. Most excellent are her works. She brings light so that all fear and distress may be forsaken, and disperses the gloom and darkness of delusion. She herself is an organ of vision. She has a clear knowledge of the own being of all dharmas, for she does not stray away from it. The perfection of wisdom of the Buddhas sets in motion the wheel of Dharma. You might imagine that prajna, wisdom, the practice of wisdom, Prajnaparamita, the generous mother of wisdom, is none other than awakened Buddha nature, which is your nature. So if we'll allow just for a moment a bit of a deviation in the second translation, just to feel a personal touch maybe. The wisdom mother, your own Buddha nature, is worthy of infinite praise. Your natural state, your nature, is utterly unstained because nothing in this insubstantial world can possibly stain it. Your awakened nature is an ever-flowing fountain of incomparable light, and from every conscious being on every plane of being, it removes the faintest traces of illusory darkness. The wisdom mother, the matrix guide, your own awakened nature, which is our awakened nature, is the power and bliss of all Buddhas and their embryonic form, we as bodhisattvas, all sets in motion the wheel of Dharma. I wonder if some of you, after yesterday, are kind of bracing yourself or cringing for this time because I gave you so much yesterday. I know it was quite a bit, and I hope that it may not be quite so content-rich today, but equally full. As I was reading that little derivation of the homage to the perfection of wisdom, and inviting us to feel this as personal, not something apart from us. The sense of setting in motion the wheel of Dharma is exactly the invitation of our practice together at this time, and the focus of our practice study during this retreat, in maintaining wonder in the face of uncertainty. Just as a tiny review, yesterday we spoke about taking our seat in practice, taking up a practice path, and taking a vow. We took our seat by reflecting on the background reality that we don't ever really know what's coming, and we're constantly walking through this vulnerable territory with the challenge to be upright and responsive. That's the background. We took up the practice of asking, what does the Dharma teach us in terms of our human capacity to respond to suffering and embrace the uncertainties of life? And then a deeper sense of then how to take a vow, which is a lifetime of inquiry in Zen, how to maintain wonder and imagination without closing down, and how to continue to work for the benefit of others, which is the Bodhisattva way. That's our practice. And I also spoke about the particular rituals and ceremonies which often help us kind of plunge into the mystery and open us to wonder. There's another word that sometimes kind of resonates with that, and that is the sense of the devotional aspects of practice. And I don't mean worshipful. The aspects of practice that makes our heart leap forward in ways that sometimes we can't even understand or explain. The wonder. There is an ancient ritual, which some of you have heard about, I'm sure. The Japanese word for it in the monastery is called tangaryo. The translation in English would be stay until morning. Tangaryo, to stay until morning. And classically, it's the enactment of an individual coming to the temple or monastery with a full and deep abiding aspiration to study and to practice, and asking to be granted entrance into the monastery or temple so that they might practice. And often, and you've heard these kinds of stories, it's said that the individual might be turned away or blocked in some way until they could demonstrate their sincerity. And so this stay until morning, this tangaryo, is that you hang out until you're let in. It's a demonstration of your dedication. Of course, these days, at least in Western training situations, it doesn't exactly happen that way. And yet it's enacted. And it's enacted because it has a lot of power. And in some ways, there's an echo and a resonance that's gone through all of our lives this past year during lockdown, we'll call it. Because that's exactly what happens during a practice period in a monastery. The gates are closed, and there's no coming and going. But in order to step through that gate, as it closes behind you, you engage the ritual of tangaryo. You sit for the first time you've entered as an expression of your devotion and dedication and aspiration. When I entered Tassajara Monastery for my training in that way, the ritual of tangaryo at Tassajara is 5 days long. So although I was technically, of course, accepted into the practice period, I, along with all the other beginners, had to enact the entry of staying until morning, although that morning went for 5 days. We would sit for morning zazen, and then through service, and then when everyone else had breakfast, we would eat with them and oryoki, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And everyone would then go to work, and we would continue to sit and walk when we needed, but stay in the zendo. People would come and clean the zendo around us. They would come and practice services as if we weren't there. We could hear people walking as they crunched on the gravel outside, going back and forth, cleaning, sweeping, doing gardening, cooking. We could hear sounds from the kitchen as things were made. And then noon service would come, and sitting, and on through the day, through each meal, and we would just sit. It was time to go to bed after the last sitting of the day. We would do so, get up the next morning and come again. And those 5 days, of course, there were bathroom breaks and we would eat and normal things, but you didn't shower or shave, or for the men, you just sat for 5 days. And it sounds a bit daunting, and in some ways it is, but it allows a student to settle into the rhythm of the monastery without engaging in it. So my question to you is, what have you learned taking all this time, a year, not just 5 days or more, of being so enclosed? What is the sense of the rhythm of your life that you have noticed, and the rhythm of everyone, of life in general, that you've noticed that you didn't notice, that you weren't quite so intimate with? You know, tangaryo establishes a dedication and a willingness to enter the monastery and the life of practice. My sitting there for those 5 days was part of an expression of my dedication. And it revealed quite a bit to me. What does it reveal for you? It certainly revealed my sincerity and my aspiration. Well, what sincerity and aspiration does this call forward in you for life going on? You know, I could have gotten up and walked out. I could have said, this is ridiculous, I'm not going to do this, and left. It would have been quite a long walk from Tassajara out of the Ventana wilderness back to civilization, but I made a choice to be there. This was not some punishment or some archaic hazing ritual. It was a choice. Because there's a big distinction between quitting and giving up, between the relinquishment and surrender that is useful to see what's on the other side of self-will. And this has been enforced on us in some ways in the last year. You know, the goal of all of Zen practice, in a way, of course, is awakening. And this practice of the past year, the sort of our enforced Tangaryo of sitting and waiting and being restricted in some ways and feeling a different rhythm that's below all the busyness. This sort of essence or direction of our practice is awakening, which is nothing more really than a profound change of heart. That's why we're practicing together. And this change of heart makes the world seem like a really different place. When I left the monastery after being there a good while and was driven back on the forest roads, 13 or so miles back to the little highway and then back through the little village out of Carmel Valley, back to Highway 1, stopping halfway there to get a little sandwich at a store, I was shocked to feel the difference, how different the world looked. And that was just on the surface level. Because with the change of heart that comes with our deep practice is a freedom of mind and a deeper awareness of joy and kindness that underlies daily life that sometimes we don't notice or we don't touch. And I hope that some of that has begun to come to the surface for you. And the question is, do you really appreciate your life? I don't mean, are you happy for it? Do you agree with everything and you like everything? Do you appreciate that you're alive? Not appreciate every condition of your life. Because that's a way of saying yes. The yes that comes in Ginsberg's poem at the end to this life. Do you choose your life? Like I chose to sit for 5 days to enter something that had meaning for me. Another yes. You're saying yes. Some of you have heard me say this. I think in one retreat in Madison, actually, someone said, where does this all lead? And I said, there are many ways you can describe what practice offers you, and it's abundant and deep and rich. But in some ways, on a practical level, that relinquishment, that giving in or giving up, giving in really, is something like, okay, I'll live my life. I will. I'll live my life. I'll choose it. Stop fighting it. And enter it deeply and see what it calls forward in me, what it asks of me. So this ritual of Tangaryo is a way that sort of guides students toward an entry point that in some ways can't be gotten to in any other way, or questions that don't come up in any other way, at least not quite so profoundly as sitting there for 5 days, or for the last 5 months or 12 months. It's a way to check your yes in a really clear and powerful manner. And all the ceremonies and forms of our Zen practice are rituals that offer us embodied vehicles for feeling into and then expressing our deepest aspirations, our appreciation and love, and the opportunity to make a profound choice rather than a casual one. A lot of times we can make a casual choice. It's just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Say, well, I think I'll try out this retreat. I think I'll read this book. Maybe I'll try out this yoga class or sit. And they can be just kind of casual choices. They're totally wonderful. But that's different than a profound choice. And when you have to sit for 5 days, or it doesn't have to be that, I'm using that as a placeholder here, of Tangaryo, you're demonstrating a profound choice. Because there's a dignity and a nobility in this way of both receiving and responding to life, which then shapes your everyday interactions and relationships. We can feel it when we enter in this way, and we can see it and appreciate it when we see it in others. Many of you have heard me say the first time I realized that I was going to ask Blanche Hartman to be my teacher is watching her lead service in Bao. It was the physical enactment, the nobility and dignity that I'm talking about, that was shocking, that showed me something that I wasn't sure I had ever seen before. And it was ordinary. In a very different way, see if you can see it just briefly in this image. I'm going to share with you just for a second. It's a very large portrait of Suzuki Roshi in City Center, San Francisco Zen Center. It's at the bottom of the stairs, so each morning as Blanche came down, she'd pass it. Do you see the devotion? Do you see the wonder? What's the relationship between wonder and devotion? But I could see it in her life, and that's what guided me that way. Now we're going to get a chance to sample 2 ceremonies on Sunday, which will enact these same qualities. There's an entering ceremony for a new head student and a completion ceremony. So there's entering and exiting, this feeling our way into and then expressing back something. Oddly, like each breath, it's like the enactment of birth and death, the coming and going. You'll see aspects of relinquishment and surrender. Generous, I would call it generous surrender. Not narrowing surrender, but generous surrender in those ceremonies. Look for it. And a kind of an offering or giving and a receiving in which these things begin to lose their ordinary meaning. And more about this a little bit later. So I think that the way that we maintain awe and wonder is by sustaining a larger view, was opening to maybe what I was reading in the Hymn to the Perfection of Wisdom as we were sitting, realizing the absolute, the sublime, the larger space, big mind, our big heart, even as we live and still are fully grounded in these fragile and impermanent bodies within our complicated, unpredictable, but necessary relationships that we have. That kind of trembling and shuddering you read in Trudy's poem, The Weight of Love in Ginsberg's. And ceremonies and rituals are just one form of entrance into the temple of the everyday. Our ceremonies and rituals, just the ceremony and ritual of Zazen, one bow, is a ceremony and a ritual which form the entryway into the temple of the everyday. And asks us, are you being nourished by life? Are you serving life? Do you, by the way, you have your bowl? Let's see some of them. Look at all these great bowls. Oh, Nancy, that's a big, nice thing in there. It's an orange. That's great. I just have a few little grapes in mine. What a beautiful. So when you're holding your bowl, if you were holding it like this, like, in a formal way, is that the gesture of offering or receiving? You can't tell, can you? Is this serving or is this being nourished? Well, it's a wonder, isn't it? And we'll come back to these bowls. And by the way, I usually do with these words that are central, I looked up wonder in the dictionary to see what it said. A feeling of surprise mingled with admiration caused by something beautiful, unexpected, unfamiliar, and explicable. Surprise mingled with admiration caused by something beautiful. I saw that in Blanche looking at the portrait. And that's the sort of noun. The verb is the desire to know something, to be curious about knowing something, and to feel doubt, wonder. And this is really two sides of our practice, isn't it? That sort of great doubt says, I wonder, I don't know, inquiring. And then the devotional surprise and admiration that opens us to the marvel of the miracle of the moment. One of our contemporary and very, I think, lovely spiritual teachers, Annie Lamott, she describes this concept, wonder, as something that takes our breath away and makes room for a new breath. That's why they call it breathtaking. Isn't that great? Wonder is something that takes our breath away and makes room for a new breath. And that's why they call it breathtaking. The novelist David James Duncan, who I didn't really know, I found that he said, maybe wonder isn't something we grab, but rather something that grabs us. And once we're grabbed, we lose the ability to remain unchanged. The capacity to be surprised bleeds into the capacity to be transformed. Now, I already know you're going to ask me to send you that. And Annie Lamott one, so I will. Think how apropos this is to our practice. Maybe wonder isn't something we grab. Maybe deep, profound practice isn't something we grab, but rather something that grabs us. How many of you have actually felt that? that you didn't seek out practice, that it came and found you. And then once we're grabbed, he says, we lose the ability to remain unchanged. Despite your strongest feelings that I can't do this, I'll never be good enough, I'll never, I'll never wake up. Well, guess what? That's your nature. So it's actually inevitable in a certain way. Once we're grabbed, we lose the ability to remain unchanged. If you want to remain unchanged, you better run really fast or do something that shuts you down. The capacity to be surprised, that bleeds into the capacity to be transformed. If we're not surprised, if our expectations aren't thwarted. So the absolute is right in front of you, as you, with you, through you, all the time. And sometimes all it takes to notice it is for all of your expectations to be thwarted. Now, because I sort of go in these two worlds, I thought, how would I think about wonder psychologically, and how would I think about it spiritually? Now, on the psychological side, and you've seen this many, many times, especially those of you who have spent a good bit of time with me in inquiry, and you come to sessions where people are showing up for inquiry. And there's usually two kinds of questions. How do I, and what should I do? Those are the two. That's how it usually starts, isn't it? How do I, whatever, and what do I do about how do I maintain an openness and amazement in the face of difficulty? What should I do to remain open through all the challenges we face? These are really great questions and point towards really admirable coping strategies for navigating difficulties. And they can help you feel better and help you manage real problems, which do require your compassionate and wise attention. But ultimately, this kind of wonder remains within the confines of the self. How do I? What should I do? How do I? What should I do? Perfectly good. We better learn them, and it's useful. But it's always going to be within the confines of the self. Now, spiritual wonder, what are the practices that reveal my true nature as a Buddha and which illuminate my personal barriers to the inconceivable, to wonder? What are the practices that reveal my true nature and illuminate my personal barriers to the inconceivable? And these kind of practices may not help you feel better immediately or at all, but you will be shown the path towards a freedom and spaciousness within which all the how-tos and the what should I do's arise and pass away. And that is the Dharma gate to wonder. So I hope you get a feel for these two sides, which are of course one thing, of the way that if we don't open to the larger view, we're just inevitably and forever coping and managing. But if we try to cling to the larger view, then we keep ourselves separate from what's needed, the problem solving. You know that I enjoy the sort of use of language that John Tarrant and Joan Sutherland, who've been partners in teaching for a long time, use. Here's one, just a couple of sentences. Tarrant says, one of the few markers of enlightenment that everybody seems to agree upon is that there's a kind of joy when you're free. And it doesn't have to be a blissed out, ecstatic samadhi state. You just look out at the fields and you're happy. Or you're just not prejudiced against life at that moment. There's no barrier between you and what you're looking at. Imagine that this was read to you, and maybe it might be, as you go for a walk at Holy Wisdom. Is that where you're going tomorrow? And suppose you stand at Holy Wisdom, that wonderful place, and there are these beautiful markers around there, that you're familiar with. And imagine Suzanne saying, one of the few markers of awakening that everybody seems to agree upon is that there's a kind of joy when you're free. And her voice and her smile, or whoever's doing this. It doesn't have to be a blissed out, ecstatic samadhi state. You just look out at the fields and you're happy. Or you're not prejudiced about life at that moment. I love that. And there's no barrier between you and what you're looking at. Say the birds and the trees and the grass and the sky and the sandhill cranes. I'm also going to send you a longer version. I'm going to read just a tiny bit from a classic, because I've been mentioning some very contemporary things. Annie Lamott, for goodness sakes. It's a classic piece from Silent Illumination by Hongzhi in the 11th century. And I hope that all of you, or many of you, have seen the new book on Silent Illumination by Gyu Ko. It's a beautiful, beautiful book on Chan practice, and I would recommend it highly. And this is just a few sentences that will give you a flavor of the translation of Hongzhi from the 11th century. And it uses the word wonder at the end. That's why I'm choosing this piece. He says, the field of boundless emptiness is what exists from the very beginning. You could just sit with that sentence, couldn't you? The field of boundless emptiness is what exists from the very beginning. Just expand and illuminate the original truth, unconcerned by external conditions. The deep source, transparent down to the bottom, can radiantly shine and can respond unencumbered to each speck of dust without becoming its partner. Very naturally, mind and dharmas emerge and harmonize, enacting and fulfilling the way of no mind. You can finally rest. With thoughts clear, sitting silently, wander into the center of the circle and wonder. Wander into the center of the circle and wonder. This is how to penetrate and study. And this is our study. And once again, even though there are these ancient formulations, there are some not so. For example, I was just reading some things again by Erich Fromm. So many of us have read many of the things over the years. And I thought, for example, Erich Fromm is a wonder, because he maintained awe and meaning in the worst conditions. That's a wonder. And he is a wonder. He's not just speaking about wonder. He said, who will tell whether one happy moment of love or joy, of breathing or walking on a bright morning and smelling the fresh air is not worth all the suffering and effort which life implies? He could get away with saying that. He's not saying one moment is worth all the suffering in the world. That's not what he's saying. Who would tell? Who would tell? Remember, wonder? I wonder whether one happy moment of love, real love, or joy, not happiness, of breathing or walking on a bright morning and smelling the fresh air is not worth all the suffering and effort which life implies. Another one I'll send you. So we're going to spend just a moment about life's nourishment. How are we nourished by everything? And I'm going to take you through a little bit of a ceremony here, and we're going to spend some time together also. You might want to bring out your meal chant. I think I sent it to you, which I can screen share if you want, but I hope you have it there. Here's a little bit from Dogen. He said, just let the Dharma be the same as food, and let food be the same as Dharma. Dharma itself is food. Food is itself Dharma. The Dharma is what is received and used by all Buddhas in the past and future. The food is the fulfillment that is the joy of Dharma and the delight of meditation. Remember, our practice is nourishment. And we want our practice to be nourishing. And so if we were engaged in a formal meal during a sesshin or for the monastery, we would be eating, sitting in our place with our bowls in front of us. This may be something that's not quite so familiar to most of us because we haven't done it. Those of us that have spent time in the monastery, it's something we do several times a day, and it's a very interesting way to eat, where you're sitting on the place where you would normally sit, but you turn around and you place your bowls on this little strip of wood, and you're served here, and you eat here. This is actually at Heiji, at Dogen's temple, where I was fortunate to go. And what they're doing in this image is the chant that now we're going to walk ourselves through, because it's a ritual and it's a ceremony. But I would like you to think of it more not only as a ritual or a ceremony for eating food, but of the nourishment that comes when you can say yes to your life. So if you have your meal chant in front of you, you can see that it begins with before serving, before the servers come in. And everyone together would chant this first part. So let's see you, I won't hear you. Let's see you say it with me. Okay? We say, Buddha was born in Kapilavastu, enlightened in Magadha, taught in Varanasi, entered Nirvana in Kushinagara. Now we set out Buddha's bowls. May we, with all beings, realize the emptiness of the three wheels: giver, receiver, and gift. Okay, just in that beginning, we start by acknowledging the birth and the practice of the Buddha, and now we set out Buddha's bowls. Here's what they look like in the formal way. That's actually the Heiji symbol there. And my three bowls and chopsticks and spoon are all in here, and you learn how to open this and close it, and you actually wash your dishes sitting in your place. But we have a simple bowl here. Now we set out Buddha's bowls. Think of it this way. Now we sit ourselves on our cushion. Now we offer ourselves to those in our community. Now we set out begging. May we, with all beings, realize the emptiness of the three wheels: giver, receiver, and gift. And that line is worth the whole chant, isn't it? We realize the emptiness. Haven't you been in situations in where you look like you're the one giving something, but if you told the truth, you'd say, man, I'm getting more than I'm giving here. And you're not even concerned about a gift. It doesn't seem like a thing. It's just what's flowing between you. So in the beginning of every single meal, we mention the great matter, the birth, enlightenment, teaching, and then death, enter nirvana. The great matter is what starts of Buddha. And now we step forward, neither giving nor receiving, but sitting here. And then you'll see in your chant, the Kokyo is the sort of cantor. And in fact, these things aren't read. If we're chanting, the Kokyo would say, in the midst of the three treasures which verify our understanding and trusting ourselves to the Dharma, we invoke. And then all of us together say, Vajrayana Buddha, pure Dharma Kaya, Lochana Buddha, complete Sambhogakaya, Shakyamuni Buddha, myriad Nirmana Kaya, Maitreya Buddha of future birth, all Buddhas throughout space and time, Lotus of the wondrous Dharma, Mahayana Sutra, Manjushri Bodhisattva, great wisdom, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, great activity, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, great compassion, all honored ones, Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Mahaprajna Paramita. And the Kokyo then would say, in breakfast, this morning meal of 10 benefits nourishes us in our practice. Its rewards are boundless, filling us with ease and joy. At lunch, they would say, the 3 virtues and 6 tastes of this meal are offered to Buddha and Sangha. May all sentient beings in the universe be equally nourished. And when we're doing that, we'd be holding our bowl up. And when that's finished, we begin to put it down, because it says, next, after serving and before eating. But see, we've just said the body of the teachings of the universal Buddha, Vajrayana Buddha, the mystical body of all the Buddhas, the Sambhogakaya, the physical embodiment of Buddha, Nirmanakaya, then Maitreya Buddha that's coming, Manjushri, Samantabhadra, Avalokiteshvara, all of the Bodhisattvas. This is what we're honoring as we eat. So let's now just say the part that is our more traditional, that you're sort of familiar with. This is a different version, where it says, after serving, before eating, verse of the 5 contemplations, we start. We reflect on the effort brought us this food and consider how it comes to us. We reflect on our virtue and practice and whether we are worthy of this offering. We regard it as essential to keep the mind free from excesses such as greed. We regard this food as good medicine to sustain our life. For the sake of enlightenment, we now receive this food. First, this is for the 3 treasures. Next, for the 4 benefactors. Finally, for the beings in the 6 realms. May all be equally nourished. The first portion is to end all evil. The second is to cultivate all good. The third is to free all beings. May we all realize the Buddha way. And now, it's time for you to have a little snack. If you feel like it, take a bite. If you don't, that's okay. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your bowl, and our wonderful assistant is going to put you in a group of a few other people as you have your snack. And talk about what's arising in this, maybe to you, strange ceremony. What happens when you hear words like this? When you say words like this? When you engage, and we're doing it just the tiniest bit, I know. And you're probably going to have 3 or 4 people in your group. And imagine what this calls forward in terms of giver, receiver, gift. And you're going to have about 10 or 12 minutes. We're going to have, let's say, 12 minutes together in your small group to have your snack and to just speak about what's arising. And then we'll come back and we'll have some time to speak a little bit more. Okay? So Becky will help you, and you'll soon have some friends in a new group for a few moments, and we'll let you know when it's time to come back. Oh, it's like magic. Everybody comes back.
Yes.
Beautiful. Some people are still eating. That's great. So let's hear from some of you. Questions you may have, concerns, things that came in your group that were surprising, anything. I'm here, and I would love to hear from you, especially the kind of discussion like we had yesterday following the talk. Just once again, go to the little reactions button on the bottom, as Becky has instructed you, I think, and click the raise your hand, and she'll bring you forward.
Hi,
Okay.
hi everybody. My name is Becky. I'm a member of Open Door in Madison.
Mhm.
And I am sitting with something that you said about the how do I's and what should I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that just seems like all of life. And
Mhm.
so I was just like, what other option is there? And I was wondering, this is a personal request, but I'm wondering if you could give an example of something that comes up for you that then you're able to see it kind of, I forget the exact word, but like kind of pass by.
Yeah, well, let's see if we can share one. That would be good. um, God, let me think. Okay, let's make it relevant to what we're doing right now. How do I make sure I respond to everybody appropriately? How do I know what to do when people come forward and ask all these questions? I don't have any preparation. I have no idea what you're going to say. And so it's obvious that if I try to solve that on a very personal, pragmatic, material level, I would have to figure out some way to have a formula or know what to do. But that's actually not possible. And I wouldn't be enacting the thing that I'm inviting you into, which is to step into, what we call beginner's mind, not knowing, and then deeply bear witness to what's happening in the moment. And you as best I can through a screen and my own body, what's happening. And then compassionate action or response might emerge from that. But it means I have to let go of the idea that I would know what to do or that I would know how to do it. The how is based on 40 years of practice. The what arises between us if I have faith and trust this process, which I do because I've been in it for so long with so many people. So the practical, the psychological would be, how do I have the skills and the knowledge and the but to learn and know what to do and how to help people and have my, my map and my recipes. But that doesn't work really well. And plus, you don't feel it the same way. But faith and practice means I have to step forward in this way, and so do you. And that's what I'm asking you to do, this thing, which is a little nerve-wracking for people to like step out into this space,
Yeah.
and to meet and be met, to offer something and receive something. And that this is something we're both doing, that we share. So is that an example that
Yes.
lands?
Yeah, that's very helpful. I've just been reading Joko Beck for the first time, and that like meeting your edge and then just continuing to practice. So it sounds like that's what you're talking about, of
Mhm.
the discomfort of letting go of the knowing, and then practice, like your skills come up, and where your skills end, then you practice. Is that kind of part of it?
And that's what koans do, these strange stories and that we feel our way through as we're meeting them, because you can't solve them on the how do I or what do I do. But as you go into them, something comes because you have to step beyond what you ordinarily do. Not because your thinking mind isn't a perfectly good thing, it is, but it's not the only thing. And that's what practice helps us, is to open that other space. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your question. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, Flint. I have a half-written sentence in my notes, and it's something that you read twice, and so there's a big part of me that just wants to see if we could finish it and I could capture it. And it was following on Becky's. It was right after you had talked about what should I do, and it was around the spiritual, and it's what are the practices that illuminate and you said a whole bunch more.
Oh, let's see in my notes if I have anything. Oh, yes, the thing that I said twice. What are the practices which illuminate my own true nature or my Buddha nature?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Actually, I used different words when I was writing it to myself. What practices reveal my true nature as Buddha?
Mm-hmm.
And what practices illuminate my personal barriers to the inconceivable, to wonder? Because what I was noting to myself is, I believe that our practices as we sit in Zazen, as Dogen says, in practice enlightenment, to express and celebrate our own awakeful nature, even if we don't recognize it, to express it through our posture and to our sitting, it's revealed to us what's always and already true. And in that process, additionally, it illuminates all the self-centered, the personal barriers, self-centered dream, thoughts, that to the inconceivable, to wonder. So that's what I was trying to capture for myself in making that note.
It's a beautiful capture, and I'm sort of, immersed in it.
Good. That's the practice way. Not to try to figure it out,
Right.
but as the novelist said, let it grab you
Right.
instead of you trying to grab it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I also
Yeah.
know you well enough to know that when you let yourself step into that room, that's when you start to quake.
Yeah.
So I know that you're actually in the practice space.
Yeah.
There's something else?
Well, I sort of don't want to move out of this space, but I want to share that in our little small group, which was so sweet. It was so lovely. That we had treat envy, in that someone had fudge covered mint Oreos. I won't reveal who it was in case they don't want to be known as the fudge Oreo mint cookie eater, but it was fun and sweet. No pun intended, of course.
Yes.
But the experience of the bowl and the eating for me was very intimate with the
Mhm.
giver, the receiver, and the gift.
Mhm.
And I've never experienced feeding myself that simply
Mhm. Mhm. And with others.
and with others.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's surprising to me just how intimate just this is.
Yeah.
It looks like nothing, but man,
Mhm.
there's something about it. Hold your bowl up. Let me see it.
So I'm visiting friends or I'm visiting a friend's home, and I first thought, oh boy, I'm gonna have a Melmac bowl, the unbreakable. But I looked at a higher shelf and I found this. So
Well, we're not unbreakable, are we?
no, no, we're not.
Thank you so much. And it's okay to stay in this space even if you go off the screen with me.
Okay.
Hello, hi Flint.
Hello.
Hello. I also loved our little small group. And as Suzanne knows, I'm completely unchurched, and so that's what comes up for me when there's any ritual, ceremony, or anything.
good.
Something. But something was said in our small group that really helped me connect, and it had to do with I'm not going to speak for the person. It's what I heard, so I'll say what I heard in it. But in the ritual of cooking in a monastery, there's such reciprocity of relationships. So there's the chants and the meditation that's happening for the benefit of the cooks and the staff, and there's the cooks and the staff that are cooking and serving for the benefit of the monks.
Mhm.
And so that's a continual reciprocal mutual aid is what it's called in community work, right? And it occurred to me that it really captured for me exactly the way when things are working just right in the community, that's as it should be.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what we've been talking about in terms of doing work in community so you can get your halo.
Yeah.
Checking the box, writing the check, I'm done, not having a relationship.
Mhm.
It was like those, how simple can you let it be? It was
Mhm.
that aha of pushing away from the words that my unchurched conditioned mind was like, "Wah." And then realizing-
that's one of the things that ceremonies are great for is they bring up everything.
Right.
Including
Well,
aversion. Like, oh, okay, that's not a problem. That's like, oh, there's a
Right.
little contraction there or something. Not because you
Yeah.
have to like it. Just
Suzanne, you once said to me, it's the form. So you put the form, and then that allows your mind, it allows you to explore in a way that I couldn't have without that structure.
yeah.
So anyway,
Well, and I
it
wanna
was like
underscore what
a
you're
great
saying, which is so important. I want to put a little underline under it. One of the things that you might know, but you might not know, in the monastery, one day I might be on the serving crew, and I'm actually bowing and serving the food to people in the zendo. Another day I'm on the cleanup crew, or another day I'm on the cooking. So this all rotates, and you literally embody no giver, no receiver. And the first time I went to a formal sesshin, a 7-day intensive, before I had gone to the monastery, but I was at San Francisco Zen Center, I didn't know very much about the forms, and it was the first 7-day retreat I'd done, so it was kind of daunting. I didn't know if I could get through it. But by the last day, of course, you're kind of worn down in a lovely way. You feel really amazing. And so I'm sitting in silence. We've done that part of the chant we've just done. The bowls are open, and the door where the servers come in opens. And the servers walk in carrying the pots for the first bowl, and it's the abbot and all the senior teachers with all their robes on, with their sleeves tied behind their neck, serving us. And I just burst into tears. Because they were the ones we've been looking up to, they've been teaching us, And they were on their knees in front of us serving us food. And then you really get it,
Yeah, as it should be.
as it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
bringing that up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Looks like we may have time for another person at least.
It's me again.
And it's Eileen.
Hi, Flint. Hello, everybody. I would like to report on our sweet, sweet little group of three, how we were able to tell our respective individual stories. And we found ourselves in this mystery of everything being interconnected and this kind of immediate intimacy among strangers almost. And just dwelling in the warmth of that. It was like a circle of three where there was no giver, no receiver, and no gift at the end. It was truly amazing, and we all were basking in the wonder of it. So we thank you for the form. We thank you for
can
this.
Feel the nourishment, it sounds like.
Yes, and
Actual
it was triggered by the nourishment. So I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think we're coming to the end of our time. I dropped off there a little bit. Are there any more hands up, Becky?
Not at this time, Flint.
Okay, we just have a couple of minutes. If people would be willing to just go back to their meal chants for a second. There's a little bit right at the end. After we've all eaten, then someone comes around with little kettles of hot water and pours water into your biggest bowl, and then you wash your dishes, as I said, every bowl. And when you get to the end, you take your bowl with a little bit of water and you drink it with all that was left from your washing your bowls. Then you dry it and you put them back together as I'd shown you. And when you finish that, everybody chants together, "This water we use to wash our bowls tastes like ambrosia. We offer it to the many spirits to satisfy them. Om Makoshalaya Savaha." As if even the way we clean up our karma and wash up our bowls, we offer everything to the many spirits who need it to satisfy them. And then there's the esoteric mantra there. Sometimes it's really great, Jan, to have things that you have no idea what it means, just to let the sound take you into a larger space. And then at the end of the meal, the kokyo, the cantor, will say, "Abiding in this ephemeral world, like a lotus in muddy water, the mind is pure and goes beyond. Thus we bow to Buddha." And it's with that bow that we can come to the end of our time today. Abiding in this ephemeral world, in other words, being in our body, on the ground, in the everydayness. And yet, like a lotus in muddy water, our awakening comes and flourishes out of that ground of being in our bodies, in our everyday life. The mind and heart of that awakening is pure and goes beyond the everyday, and yet comes from it and back to it. And thus we bow to the awakened space that we create together. Thank you for coming together so that we can create that space today and enact it. We'll do some more of that tomorrow. And if you would make sure that you have a symbol or a picture or something that has to do with something in this past year that maybe you think you've had to relinquish or let go of, or maybe it's been a loss. How to prepare for what's coming by letting go of what has been. Some symbol of that for yourself. And as I said, and I'll remind you, I'll dedicate tomorrow's practice to my father, who died on May 1st last year. But it won't be just about him, but I'll dedicate my practice to him. And we'll be speaking about today how we take our practice and nourish ourselves and each other through relationship, and how we make the way for what's to come by letting go of what's been lost.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And I look forward to being with you again tomorrow, and enjoy your beautiful practice of the evening and the ones in the morning.
Mhm.
And Eileen, I say Eileen or Suzanne, if you have any more announcements, or should we say good night?
This is Suzanne. Just a reminder, we'll meet again tomorrow morning at 7. We begin with movement. Don and Catherine Coleman will be leading us in movement, and Kathy Rashke will be leading meditation practice and the reflection. And then we'll have an 8 to 8:30 discussion for those people who want to stay after the 8 hour. And we'll meet at Holy Wisdom at 10 for walking meditation. So have a sweet night, everyone, and thank you so much, Flint.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.